Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the webinar. Today we are going to walk through how you, as a grants registrant, would update your previous registration from CCR and how you would do that in SAM. We've got a few tasks. As Kelly mentioned during the introduction, we're going to show you how to actually create a user account. We're going to show you then how to connect that user account with your old registration record. And then I'm going to walk you through on the demonstration site actually the process of updating your registration record. The first two tasks will be PowerPoint slide presentation, pretty straightforward. And then, like I said, the third task will actually be on the live site. It is a staging site, so it's not the production data, but you will be able to better visualize what you will experience when you go through SAM and kind of get an idea for what you need to have on hand and what you need as you go through the registration. So for task one, again, we're going to start now with the creating your user account. Every site you go to on the internet needs some sort of user account, it seems like. So SAM, the System for Award Management, is no different. There are different things you can do with a user account. You can have just the account itself. You can save searches and not really do much more than that, which is fine. Very nice for research, but that's probably not why you're here. You're probably looking at the second bullet. You want to manage a registration record. You want to do business with the federal government. So we will show you how to create an individual user account, and then in task two, we'll show you how to connect that with your old record. There are also those on the federal government side who need to verify your registration status and determine information about you or your organization prior to offering an award. And so that, for them, they have certain things they need to do as well, and they would also need a user account. When you go to create these user accounts, you're going to see two choices, this individual or system. Individual is for the business or organizations that want to do business with the government. That is really what you're going to focus on. The system account, those are for the government systems that interact with SAM and use data for payment purposes or to prepare contract award documents, that kind of thing. Don't worry about it. We just wanted to make you aware that there was this other side of the world, if you will. So when you go to sam.gov, and you'll notice I stuck the URL there in the header of the slide, and that's on purpose because I want you to get familiar with looking at the .gov in the address window, because that will tell you you're actually at SAM, that you're not at another site that may look familiar or similar. But the .gov ending is what you need to look for in the address bar to know that you're on the government website. You will see that you've got two choices there, the little yellow arrows pointing to your Create an Account link. You can click on either one. It will take you to the same page. And here you can see the two choices, the individual account or the system account. It tells you right there, pretty straightforward, why you would want an individual user account. You want to focus on things like register or update your entity, so your business or organization. That's what you want to do. Go ahead and click that Create an Account button. The information that the system is going to ask you for is very simple when it comes to creating an account. It's pretty much just what the fields there with the asterisks, so your first name, your last name, your email address, your phone number. Now I will tell you, pay attention to the phone number format. It can be a little frustrating, but if you're a US-based entity, you have to put the parenthesis, the area code, the closed parenthesis, no space, the 3 digits, the dash, the 4 digits, just like the format is right there. If you select a country different than the United States, then that won't apply to you, but you will get an error if you don't put it exactly in that format. Better safe than sorry. Go ahead and do it from the beginning. So once you've entered the basic information, name, email, phone number, and country, you're going to go to the next page, and this is just a simple account information. Your username is going to be yours forever, for lack of a better way of putting it. So choose wisely. Whatever username you pick, if for some reason you change organizations, you could still have the same username, but you would have to get different roles and permission, which means that, if you managed a registration record in one organization, you clearly wouldn't be able to do it for the other. but your username could be the same. So that once you've created it, you can't change it. Everything else about your user account, you can update. You can change your email address, you can change your phone number, but the username itself, once created, you're set. So then the next thing you're going to do is go ahead and create your password. Like, again, all web-based systems, you're going to have some combination of security features that you have to meet. SAM is nice is that it'll tell you with little green check marks when you have actually created a password that meets those criteria. 8 characters, a number, a letter, and a special character. You confirm it, and you're good to go. You then select 3 security questions, and you answer each of them. They are meant to be ones that you will remember. They're meant to be things that only you would know. And they're meant to be things that would just trigger kind of an automatic reaction and that you would answer instinctively. So you're going to go ahead and fill those out. And then before you submit it, you are given the opportunity just to review everything and make sure that it is what you want. I would recommend printing this page so that you have it for your records, so that you've got your security questions and answers, and that way you have it on hand. Hit submit, and you get the confirmation page. Now, at this point, you're not done. You'll note the bolded text right there where it says, "We just sent you an email to the email address you gave so that we can confirm your account creation." This is just a little security step to make sure that the email address that you actually have access to. So you're not just entering someone else's email address, that you can really go and get it. So what you would do is go to your email, whatever email you used in the registration, and you would look for the Welcome to the System for Award Management email, and you'd open it. And in this email, which of course is generated by the system, it's automatic, it's going to tell you what your username is, and then it's going to give you a link. You may either click on the link and go through, or you can copy that link and then paste it into a browser window. When you do, it'll take you to this login page. This is the page that you need to click on. You need to enter your username and password, and that will confirm. There you go. You log in, and now you have activated your account. So you have a brand new SAM user account. You've seen the confirmation screen. You've got the "Thank you for activating your SAM account. This is a good thing." You accept the fine print. And now you're in SAM. You've logged in. So at this point, you've completed task 1. You have created a user account, and you can log into SAM. But that is all you've done. That's why we need to go to task 2. Task 2 is where you are going to connect this brand new shiny user account with your old registration record from CCR. All right, we talk migrate. We're not referring to birds and flying south. We're talking about taking this user account and connecting it to that old registration record so that you can update it, that you can manage it, and that you can make sure that it is active in SAM so that you can do business with the government like you want to. The DUNS number, your Data Universal Numbering System number, that 9-digit number, is what uniquely identifies your entity, so your business or organization in SAM, and that's what you are registering in SAM, and all the information about that DUNS number. So if you are the same person that used to manage your record in CCR, and you use the same email address that you used to use, the system should recognize you. You should have permission already to manage that DUNS number registration, and so you would be good to go. If you were the one who used to manage your registration record in CCR, but you didn't use the same email address, that's okay. You can still search for it, and you can connect to your account that way, and I'll show you how to do that. If, however, the person who used to manage your record is no longer with the organization, for now, you will need to work with the help desk at the Federal Service Desk, and the information is there, www.fsd.gov or 866-606-8220 to get help accessing your old record. And you will need to provide some information to make sure that you legitimately are associated with that organization, which I'm sure you understand is for your own security. So right now we're going to go through and migrate the permission from CCR, so the permission that you used to have in CCR, to your new SAM record, to your new SAM user account, sorry. So when you first log in for the first time, you will see a little bar across the top, and it asks you, do you want to migrate this legacy system account? And you would say yes, and then it will give you 3 system options. SAM itself incorporates the functionality, in other words, what these other systems used to do. It combined all of them. So you had something called the Central Contractor Registration System, you had the Federal Agency Registration System, you had something else called the Online Representations and Certification Application, which from the grant side you don't need to worry about, but it is part of SAM. And then you had something called the Excluded Parties List System. So all 4 of those systems were combined into one, and this is what you're operating in today. For purposes of this webinar, we are going to be focusing on the Central Contractor Registration side, where you're migrating that old user account permission to your new record. All right, so CCR, again, you would enter the email address that was used to manage the old record, and that's really what you're trying to do here. If you use the email address, and you should be able to see the samwebinar01@gmail.com, that was the one that I used to manage my account on the old system, so it recognizes me, or I can search for it, and it will do the same thing on this page. It'll bring back, it'll say, in CCR, your username and this email address were connected. Is that what you want? You would say yes, and that's all there is to it. Of course, that's in a, not perfect world, but that's if you have the information in the right email address and you can get to it. That's what you want to do. Now, if you get this message, this error message, that means that someone else in your organization has already associated their user account to your DUNS numbers registration record. So you can either walk around and try and figure out who in your organization has already done it, or sometimes this does happen, you have actually already completed the task and either didn't realize it or maybe forgot, and maybe you already have it. So the way to check is to go in and actually log into SAM and see if you have access to your own record, and I'll show you how to do that next. That said, I am now in the staging site, and you can now see it, which is the desired outcome. I'm going to log in, and we are going to walk through the process of updating your registration record. Again, I apologize for the delay there. As you notice, I entered my username and password. I am accepting the user agreement. You're welcome to read that to your heart's content. Basically means you accept the terms of use for accessing the system for award management because it is a government system. All right, so you log in. This is the same thing I showed you in the screenshots. You've got your basic navigation across the top. You also have your navigation down the left side. This is what will help you as you're actually going through the update process. We're going to select the Register and Update Entity link. And then for purposes of this webinar, I'm going to say that I have an organization that used to have a record in CCR, and that's what I'm going to update. It is still active, so that's good. I will look under the complete registrations because that's where active records are. If for any reason it had expired, I would look under inactive registrations. All the data would still be there, but that's where I would have to go to update it. If I was in the middle of updating it and I had to go do something else and come back, I would find the draft or the work in progress under incomplete registrations. So all that said, let us go to complete registrations. If you manage more than one account, you could always search for whatever the DUNS number is. At the moment, this is just going to bring up my entity. So my organization is called Gorman Manufacturing, and this is a made-up company. This is not real, so there's no danger here. The information you're seeing is all for purposes of demonstration. So you have several options. You can update the entity registration, which is what we will do. You could also view it if you just wanted to kind of refresh your memory and see what was in there. That's fine. The red button is if you wanted to deactivate it. I would caution you against hitting the red button. It's always a dangerous thing, but you do have the option of deactivating the record if you wish. So let's go ahead and update this registration record. The first thing that the System for Award Management is going to ask you is, do you want to update the purpose of registration? So if you remember in CCR, you were asked, are you interested in pursuing contracts? Are you interested in pursuing grants only, or are you interested in pursuing contracts and grants? It was an interesting question, but it didn't change what you had to answer. In SAM, the purpose of registration, or why you're here, will actually determine what information you provide the system. So if you truly are interested only in federal financial assistance opportunities, grants, cooperative agreements, then you want to make sure that you're selecting the federal financial assistance response. So I'm just going to say yes so that I can show you your options. The DUNS number that you have, and in this case we're a business organization, so the other types of things you could be would be a government organization. Since our record is already in here, it knows that we are a business organization. If I were to tell it, I am just not interested in bidding on contracts, I really am only interested in pursuing grants or other federal financial assistance, then it will ask me certain questions, actually less information than if I were to tell it, you know what, I'm actually interested in pursuing federal contracts as well, because there are a lot of things that are required in the federal acquisition regulation that you need to provide. So if you are truly only interested in pursuing federal financial assistance and you want to just make sure, then definitely update your purpose of registration and move on. All right, so now you're seeing here that you are only going to have to provide core data and points of contact. If you had said yes for the contract side of things, you would be providing core data about your business or organization. You would also be providing assertions, which are information that the system will use later to help calculate various things. Then you would be responding to an entire section of FAR-based representations and certifications, and then you would be doing points of contact. So at this point, you look and you see down the left side, you've got all these little bubbles and different stages of the registration, and those will change color as we go through, and you will see how far along you are. So that's nice, kind of a visual reminder. You also know that because we had a registration in CCR, our information is already here based on our DUNS number, and it will ask you to compare what you have versus what Dun & Bradstreet has on file for that DUNS number. If for any reason your physical address has changed, you need to work with Dun & Bradstreet to update that information, and then you would come back in 24 hours later and you would refresh the D&B data, and that will pull the information over from Dun & Bradstreet. For this webinar, we're happy with our address and we're going to move on. So each of these headers on the left is essentially a page name in this registration process. You can see where you are by the little blue arrow, you can see what you've completed by the green check mark, but at the same time, if for any reason you're curious about what something on the page means or what you are providing, you can go to this content glossary on the right and you can click on the various links and the definitions, the glossary definitions will appear. You can determine what the different address types are. I mean, every field on each page has its definition to the right. So that is a nice tool to have on hand. Throughout all of these pages, you're going to end up with fields that have red asterisks. Those red asterisks are what you have to fill out. You're welcome to provide the additional information that's not mandatory, hence the definition of optional, but you don't have to. All right. Let us spend a moment just talking about the MPIN. This Marketing Partner Identification Number has been around for a while. It is 9 characters. You've got to at least have one letter and one number. and it cannot have spaces or special characters, but that is essentially a system password that you create that you will use in other systems. So if you're going to go register in grants.gov, when you create your MPIN, you need to write it down and guard it as part of your important information, because you will need it in grants.gov. There are other places you will need it as well. Most importantly, probably for you, will be the grants.gov side. All right. You'll notice that the physical address is grayed out. That means you can't change it because it is coming from Dun & Bradstreet, and that was the part where we talked about earlier. If you need to update that, you would go to Dun & Bradstreet and do it there, and the system will pull it in. And that's for data quality, to make sure that the information is reliable, and that's what is truly associated with your organization. Now, you can obviously have a different mailing address. That's fine, and you're welcome to do so. If you want to just copy the physical, that's great. If you want to have an additional mailing address, you can do that as well. When you get down to the tax identification number, so your TIN, your taxpayer identification number, is more often than not going to be what's referred to as an employer identification number. And at the end of the presentation, I've got the link for where to go apply for that at the IRS if you need it. That's what every registrant in SAM should have, because it's your business or organization. There are certain types, certain kinds of entities called sole proprietors who could, if they wanted to, use their Social Security number, but even they are eligible to apply for an EIN for free from the IRS, and so I would recommend that you do that. Now, there was a note next to the TIN field that says it may take a couple days to get your number from the IRS. A caveat to that is when you apply for the EIN, you actually can get it very, very quickly. It just takes a few days to maybe a week sometimes for that EIN to be entered into the IRS's system so that SAM can match against it. Remember, all these systems have to talk, and unfortunately, they're not completely near real time, so there is definitely a process of getting the data from one place to another. So we are now on what's called the IRS consent page. And this language is very specific, and it is approved and blessed by the IRS lawyers. And what this means is that you are providing the government your taxpayer identification number and your taxpayer name. And then we are going to send that to the IRS, and they're going to make sure they match, because different government systems will use them to help ensure payment gets to the right place and that you are truly who you say you are. So you have to give your consent for us to have the information and to use it like we need to. You'll note that the taxpayer name is not pre-filled, so that's good. The reason it's not pre-filled is because what the IRS has on file may be a little different than your legal business name that's associated with your DUNS number. For instance, in this example, Gorman Manufacturing is my taxpayer name. If you remember, Gorman Manufacturing Company, Inc., which you see right here, is my legal business name that's associated with my DUNS number. The important thing to remember, if you forget everything else that I say today, is that this name, this taxpayer name, has to match what you have on file with your last set of taxes. So whatever tax returns you filed last year, that's what you put there. The taxpayer identification number, the TIN, is going to fill from the page before, so you can't change it on this page. If for any reason you want to, you would go to the previous page and change it there. And please be aware, when you change it, you will trigger SAM to send the information to the IRS again. So pause for a moment. Imagine that you've gotten the entire way through the registration process. Your record has gone active. Everything's good. For some reason, you go in and you're updating it, and you change something on the IRS consent page that will re-trigger a validation to the IRS. So it's really not necessary. Try to not touch this page unless you really need to. If you did need to update, for instance, maybe the individual providing the consent, you would need to make sure that You can edit the fields, and to do that, the easiest thing to do is just delete the taxpayer name and re-enter it. That way, the system knows that it needs to send it to the IRS again. All right, you will also see that the date has pre-filled, and that is because it is today's date, and that is when your MPIN, you are using it as your signature. So that is signing it for you. All right, we are now on what's called the CAGE or NCAGE page. The Commercial and Government Entity Code is another identification number. It is assigned by the Defense Logistics Agency. It is used within many Department of Defense systems and actually quite a few other systems. It's a mandatory part of your registration. If you are already registered, then you already have a CAGE code, and it will be displayed there. If you were registering for the first time, you would probably select no because you wouldn't have one yet, and that's fine because it'll be assigned to you during the process. Once you've submitted your registration, one of the additional validations is to get that CAGE code assigned. Then we're going to save and continue and move to the next page. And again, you see our little green check marks are building up on the left, giving us a feeling of accomplishment. Now we're providing general information about our organization, your country of incorporation, your state of incorporation, if those apply. If they don't, you just select not applicable. You're going to go through, and again, if you have questions at any time what these different things are, you can click on the right-hand side and see the actual definitions. A little word here about these two boxes. Anytime you see two boxes like this in SAM, you can click it, add, the value will appear on the right. If you want to unselect it, you click the box and hit remove, and it goes away. Whatever ends up on this right-hand screen, that is what will be part of your record. All right, each of these, again, may or may not apply to you. For my registration, they do not apply. I'm going to say that we are a corporate entity, but we're tax exempt, and that we are a not-for-profit. And then I'm going to remove and add this. And then I'm going to remove this. All part of updating your record. Make sure that you've got everything accurate, because remember, you're looking at this information for the first time now that it's migrated over from CCR. Things may have changed since you had last updated your record. The financial information page is incredibly important. If you are a U.S.-based organization or an international organization that does have banking, have the ability to accept payment through electronic funds transfer through a U.S. bank, this is where you provide that information. You do have to say whether or not you accept credit cards as a method of payment. You're going to confirm whether you have a checking or savings account. When you enter the routing number itself, the bank routing number, it will pre-populate and pull up from our list of banks what the actual name of the bank is, so that will allow you to validate that. And then the account number. This again is the account for your organization to which you wish the government to send payment. So obviously make sure it's the right one. Let's spend a moment and talk about delinquent federal debt. If your organization had a flag or had something that said it had delinquent federal debt, there would be an indicator here, and it would say delinquent federal debt, yes. What does that mean? That means that the Treasury's Financial Management Service has reported to SAM that DUNS number, that organization's DUNS number, has delinquent federal debt. That could be many different things. It could be anything from student loans to tax debt. Some federal agency has reported to the Treasury Department that there is some outstanding delinquent federal debt. It does not mean that you can't be awarded to. It does not mean that you can't get a contract or grant. What that tells a government contracting officer or a government grants management officer is that they can't pay you with the government purchase card. So it is certainly something that you want to investigate, and we always give you the phone number there for the financial management service, and you can go find out, as much information as you can, and then hopefully resolve that, because it's not something that you want to continue, but it's also not the absolute end of the world, and it's something that you can work with Treasury to resolve, and also be empowered to work with your either government contracting officer or government grants officer to explain the situation. So we just wanted to call that to your attention. All right, again, under all circumstances, please pay attention to the format. If there's a format to the right of a field, it means that really, truly, that's what you have to use when you enter that number. The remittance address, it can be different than your mailing address. It can be different than your physical address. It is where, if there's a problem with payment, where either a check will be sent, or more importantly, where the government will try and send some sort of information to notify you of the issue. So please make sure that that information is complete. All right. You'll notice we are moving right along our core data here. We're down to the last few sections. The executive compensation questions are threshold questions. They are asking very specific things to determine whether or not you would have to report executive compensation as is required in the Transparency Act. So you have to look at this and say, did 80% or more of your entire organizational revenues come from federal awards of some sort? If the answer to the question 1 is yes, did that also equal more than $25 million? So that's a very high bar. And if both of those are yes, then the answer to the question 1 is yes. If you said no, you'll notice here how the second question suddenly becomes not applicable. So I've never gotten a federal grant or a federal contract in my life. It's clearly 80% of my money couldn't have come from federal contracts or grants. I'm going to answer no, and I'm done. And then you would save and continue and move on. If you said yes, I've gotten a lot of federal contracts, then what the transparency requires us to ask is, does the public already have access to that? Because this is all about showing where the money goes. So if the public already has access to information about how your executives are compensated, then again, you're done. If the public already has access, that's fine. You would save and continue and move on. Only if you said, yes, 80% and $25 million came from federal contracts and grants, and the public doesn't already have access to it, then you would provide the names and amounts of the compensation of the 5 most senior executives in your business or organization. So for this, we're going to say yes and move on. So I kind of explained that maybe to take some of the mystery out of it and hopefully a little bit of the fear. That information, even when captured by SAM, is only reflected in association with an actual award. So, as they say, knowledge is power. All right, the next section we're on here is the proceedings. Proceedings are another thing that you're sharing information about you. The contracting officers and the grants management officers, they're going to take that into account in terms of an overall eligibility assessment. This information would be displayed, if it was relevant, on something called the Federal Awardee Performance Information and Integrity System, which is quite a mouthful, but it's FAPIS, and that is another public-facing system that contracting officers and grants officers can use to find out additional information about you. The key here, is you're reading the questions and you're trying to determine whether or not they apply to your organization. If they do, excellent, please provide the information. If they don't, say no. So again, they're conditional. So if you say yes, I've had a contract or I'm bidding on a contract and that specific provision is in there, then you're going to say yes. And then you're going to look and determine, have we already gotten more than $10 million of grants or contracts? And only if you say yes to that, do you have the option to even say whether you have had a criminal, civil, or administrative proceeding, of each of those particular determinations within the last 5 years. And so that's, again, it's not scary. It's just sharing information and making sure you read the question and you read it in terms of your organization before you actually respond. So we'll save and continue. And we're going to go to the information opt-out page. All right, information opt-out. This deals specifically with whether or not your organization is going to be searchable in SAM by someone who's not a government user. So if a government user logs in, and that's key, if they log in, they will be able to see whether or not you have opted out. If you are pursuing on the contract side the Small Business Administration's 8A program, or you are looking to become certified as a historically underutilized business zone firm, you absolutely have to be searchable in the public search. It's part of the requirements. If for some reason you do not want your organization's information to be searchable, you would click no. But again, this is only impacting the search. It would not prevent information from being shared under a Freedom of Information Act request. For now, we will just say yes. And again, we operate under the open government principle of transparency is a good thing. We protect the information that's truly sensitive at the data element level. So your banking information, your taxpayer identification number. There are certain things that are never shared with the public, but your name, your address, your very basic business information, that's publicly available information, and it's your choice whether or not to have that included in search results. Okay, now you're going to get to review your information. You can collapse it, which would allow all of the little sections to kind of fall down on one another. You can expand them just by clicking on the header. If at any point you scroll down and you say, oh, there's something in here that is not what I meant, you can click the button and edit. And each of the sections would allow you to go back and edit that particular section. Or if you're happy with what you've got, you can save and continue. And I will talk a little faster just so that we can get through the complete registration process. The points of contact. Again, you've got different points of contact, different types. The government business POC and the electronic business POC are really the two most important in terms of other government systems. From your standpoint as a potential grant applicant, the electronic business point of contact is your most important because that is who grants.gov will use as your authorized organizational representative, your AOR. And that person, so whoever you put here, has to be knowledgeable about your registration and has to be knowledgeable about your mission, because that will be who grants.gov will seek permission to allow users into their system. All right. A quick note, when you first get your information over from CCR, you may see the names look like this. It may be all in the first name field. It's because CCR had one data element for the name. All you need to do is take the last name and put it in the last name field, and that will ensure you do not get an error when you submit. Other potential errors that you could hit, again, if for some reason your phone number is not in the right format, make sure that's correct. Another thing that could happen is as you scroll down and you look at these different points of contact, if for some reason you had an optional point of contact in your old registration record from CCR and it was collapsed, see how these collapse here? If it was collapsed and you didn't notice it, and the first name and last name were in the same field, you would get an error when you tried to move past this page. So go ahead and take a quick look and make sure there are no optional points of contact collapsed, hidden. If you want to keep the data there, that's fine. Again, just take that last name, toss it down in the last name field, and you're good to go. All right, at this point, you're actually reviewing your entire registration. It took a lot longer for me to talk about doing the registration than hopefully it would take you to actually complete it. Certainly you want to read everything and make sure that you're confident in what you're putting there, but really, what you have to provide in the system for award management is significantly less on the grant side than it was in CCR. The process has been streamlined a lot, and what you are entering is really what the grants community needs about your organization to be able to make their decisions. So that is a good thing. So we will now go down and hit submit, and that is key. You can get all this way, and if you forget to hit submit, that is, well, it's tragic because your registration will not actually be submitted. I am going to move back over to the presentation and see if I can find, there we are. So we'll pull the presentation back up. All right, so task 3 is what we just did. We walk through updating your record. We would get the confirmation page. And again, you're looking at your name at the top, your DUNS number, your cage code, everything's good there. Now what happens? All right, you've submitted your update, you're feeling great, you're done with this whole registration update process, now what? You'll get an email from sam.gov letting you know that the submission, was successful. Congratulations. Then it goes through that external validation process I alluded to earlier, where the IRS will confirm that your taxpayer identification number and your taxpayer name match, and then the Defense Logistics Agency on the cage code will validate your information there. So you will get emails at a couple different points in time. You'll get it when your registration is submitted. You will get an email when your registration passes that IRS validation. If for some reason you got distracted or you had to go away and do something in the middle of that core data section, but you'd passed the IRS consent point, daily we send information over to the IRS, and if you were past the IRS consent page, we would go ahead and send the information over. Because what we want to do is make sure that when you do come back, as much as possible has already been done. So you could conceivably get a "you've passed the IRS validation" email before you've completed the process. Please don't get mixed up. It's just we're trying to help you move along. You still need to go the whole way through and submit to complete the registration. You'll also get an email if for any reason your record fails the cage validation. And then just as a general note, I would say while you're updating a registration in SAM or at any point thereafter, pay attention to any emails that could come from a Defense Logistics Agency email account, so ending in @dla.mil, because that could have very specific instructions from the cage team on information they need from you. So please, 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 please pay attention to that. All right. We talked about the last name, first name thing. Pay attention to that. We talked about the optional points of contact thing. Remind you on that. If for any reason your expiration date on CCR was before December 2010, you're going to probably have to contact the Federal Service Desk to get connected to that record, because there isn't an email address that we can migrate. When you're ready, have the last 4 digits of your taxpayer identification number, bank account, financial institute, have that information on hand, and obviously your SAM username. All right. For whatever reason, SAM works best in Firefox and Google Chrome. That doesn't mean it won't work in Internet Explorer, but if for any reason you're having difficulty, try clicking the compatibility mode button icon. It looks like a little piece of ripped paper. That will help pretty much in most every circumstance. General tip, just even though you can navigate between different sections, you will have better luck going straight through and clicking each screen, save and continue, or next. I can't say be sure to submit your registration enough. That is essential. You won't become active in SAM until you've passed those external validations and have gotten that active status. Once you get the notice that says your registration is active, it will still take another 24 hours for it to be able to show up in grants.gov. They've got to be able to pull the extract, load it into their system. So start early, I guess, is the best advice. This is what I promised about the registering in the IRS to get an employer identification number. If for any reason you want to search to see if you have a CAGE code, this is the link where you can go do that. The grants.gov website does have very nice step-by-step instructions for how to register there. I mentioned that the MPIN is important. Once you are complete, always in your business information section, your MPIN, that's where you're going to find it. And then your electronic business point of contact is in the points of contact section. All right, so in summary, we've gone through 3 tasks. We've created a user account. We've associated that account with the right, correct set of permissions so that you can manage your record. We've walked through updating an entity record. If you need more help, on the SAM website, there are frequently asked questions. There are quick user guides. There is a very long but informative full user guide. There are helpful hints documents. They are all found on the Help tab. If you want more help, the Federal Service Desk is the supporting service desk for SAM. You can go to the website. You can ask a question. You can search the Answer Center. They are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern.